You know, I love crossover games. The idea of seeing the likes of Mario and Sonic teaming up in Super Smash Bros. Was a dream come true. Everybody's in on it nowadays. I love the Marvel vs. Capcom series. They're making another Marvel vs. Capcom. No X-Men, but it's got Mega Man X, so I guess that's a trade-off. But that is not the focus of the video. So when Midway announced their next Mortal Kombat game, was it going to be a follow-up to Armageddon? Presumably a sequel set in the far future with most of the fighters having died in the conflict, and those who survived training a new generation. No, instead of that they asked the question, how would you like to see Scorpion and Batman in the same game? And everybody went like, Yes, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. I remember the reaction to this was widespread. Everybody was saying, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Even I have to admit, I raised my eyebrow. What was the purpose of this? I love Mortal Kombat and I love DC, but I would never think that these two belong together in any shape or form. I even bought the collector's edition. And I must rant. Look at this thing. This is a collector's edition? What kind of box is this? Why couldn't it be a regular box like every other game? Ugh. Well, at least it comes with a comic that's illustrated by John Tobias, and the cover is a nice piece of art by Alex Ross himself, so I guess it's not all bad. Let's just play the damn game. So, like always, I'll be starting with the story. Thankfully, the story isn't canon to either the MK or DC universes. Then again, DC canon is such a mess that it's not even worth going into. There are character bios once again, but they don't really tell you anything you didn't already know. Even though for God knows whatever reason they list Shao Kahn as Raiden's brother, and I thought it was an unspoken rule that we never speak of that abomination of a movie. But that's not the bulk of the story. We have a full cinematic story mode this time around. Yeah, what a great idea, right? There's two sides, the MK and the DC side, and you have to play through both to get the full story. The format is broken up into chapters, and those chapters are character focused. Essentially, you play as a character for 4 fights and then switch to someone else. This was Ed Boon's idea.
My contribution was the format that the story is told in. I wanted it to be in chapters because the player has to learn that character while he's playing it, and so we wanted to keep him with a familiar character for several fights and then move on to another character. The cutscenes set up all the fights and makes the player feel like he's actually involved and participating in the story.
Nah, not really, Ed. Getting the player involved would be letting them have a sense of choice in who they want to play as. Besides, I'm really not going to master a character by playing 4 fights in story mode, and the big problem is that you don't get to play as every character. MK has 7 chapters, and DC has 8. Why the imbalance? Apparently Katana was supposed to have a chapter, but it was cut for unknown reasons. So on to the story. Shao Kahn's forces have been routed. Raiden confronts the defeated Emperor, and alerts him to his allies abandoning him.
Even now your allies desert you. Quan Chi, traitor!
I love that Quan Chi actually stopped, turned around, and let Shao Kahn hit him with the hammer. But a lightning blast from Raiden knocked Shao Kahn into the portal. Meanwhile, over in the DC universe, the DC heroes have just repelled one of Darkseid's invasions. Darkseid tries to escape using the boom tube, but Superman stops him with a blast of heat vision. The portal and the boom tube go haywire, and this causes a temporal imbalance, so the two universes are beginning to merge. This is causing several characters to disappear, thus explaining why characters such as Johnny Cage and Robin don't show up, or because the developers didn't want to bother putting in characters who weren't playable. They use exposition like energy being in constant flux to explain why some of these characters are actually able to fight against Superman. I guess I'll take it. Though you have to play both sides to get the full story, the same thing generally happens. The heroes and villains find that they have to team up to stop the other invading universe, who they believe to be minions of Dark Khan. Yeah, that's our bad guy, pretty much a fusion of Darkseid and Shao Kahn. I mean, it's not a very original name, but what else could you name a fusion of Darkseid and Shao Kahn? One thing I find particularly noteworthy is that on both sides, it's the villains who say they have to align with the heroes to stop the merging of the two universes. Isn't that something? Regardless of how you play, it all converges with both sides facing each other off. Dark Khan shows up. Gotta say, not exactly how I'd imagine a fusion of Darkseid and Shao Kahn would look. He activates everyone's combat rage, which is pretty much the game's excuse for why characters are just fighting each other instead of actually talking their differences out. since a lot could have been avoided. The characters just asked, "Hey, who are you?" But they don't do that. Back on track, a massive battle takes place. Well, it's shown in stills because I'm guessing the developers didn't have the money to depict such a massive battle. I mean, a shame about character chapter format. I would have liked to have been able to play some of those fights. Regardless, Raiden and Superman are the only ones left standing as they head off to confront Dark Khan. After a brief let's you and him fight, Raiden and Superman come to the shocking realization that they aren't enemies. And managing to overcome their rage, they manage to defeat Dark Khan, which demerges the universe with one minor twist. Shao Kahn and Darkseid end up in the opposite universes. Shao Kahn gets put in the Phantom Zone while Darkseid gets tied up in the Netherrealm. Kinda lame in comparison. What can I say I liked about the story mode? Well, I liked seeing Scorpion and Batman in the Batmobile together, even if this Batmobile has got to be the worst Batmobile I've ever seen. I liked this moment, because at least they're self-aware. I liked the fact that the villains were the ones who took the initiative to work together with the heroes. I liked how Scorpion was trying to avoid fighting until they provoked him. What I didn't like? The combat rage was a flimsy excuse at best.
The rage!
I didn't like how it depended on characters not being intelligent. I also think it's a shame they cut out Katana's chapter because she's my favorite female character, and there probably was some information that we missed because of it. And I didn't like that it's pretty obvious the story mode was made on the cheap. There's no shots of non-playable characters except for Quan Chi, who, for a game that's supposedly set around MK3, is wearing his Deadly Alliance attire for some reason. The voice acting is really hit and miss. Batman's voice is trying way too hard to be badass, although many of the now longtime MK voice actors got their start here, and that's really all I can say about the story mode. The character rosters are all based around the most iconic characters from each franchise, which is why it's not surprising that for MK characters, all the characters in the game are from MK1 and 2. DC characters, well, of course you have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Shazam, or Captain Marvel as he was called back then, and from the villain side you have Joker, Lex Luthor, and Catwoman. Gotta be honest, I wouldn't put Catwoman in the same iconic category as Joker and Luthor, but okay, I'm all for obscure characters getting representation, so I got no complaints about the roster. It's about who you'd expect for a game like this. For the gameplay, well, they've gone back to a more 2D style approach, and you can link special moves into your combos again, so finally special moves have a purpose again. You can even pull off these super moves, which require you inputting another set of special moves, but these are incredibly taxing to pull off, and not for much reward. In fact, that's what the combo challenge is for. It's to teach you how to pull these off. Amazingly, I actually was able to pull them off. I even have the achievement to prove it. I'll never get the win 25 matches in a row achievement. Online for this game is pretty much dead. Back to the gameplay, it's amazing to me just how slow it is, and the characters move like robots and have the same generic get-up animations. You can just tell that Midway was hurting for cash at this point. Your rage meter basically serves two purposes. You can either build it all the way up to activate the rage, which makes your character twice as powerful, or you can use one bar for a breaker. This is incredibly broken and serves to unbalance the game. One thing I will give credit for is that the DC characters have very fitting special moves. Batman's Batarang, Superman's Heat Vision, Wonder Woman's Lasso. Even though it's odd that it doesn't ensnare the orange, but I guess that's because they were lazy. Joker has very good special moves that fit him very well. The Wake Up game is virtually unchanged from Armageddon, for better or for worse. As for new additions, stage transitions are back, which involve freefall fighting. Basically, you press some buttons and you deal damage to the character in freefall. But if they press the same button you press, they can turn the tables on you. Even if you're the one who deals the damage, if they turn the tables on you in a reverse direction, you will receive all the damage that you dealt. That is so lame. You can also pull people into a boxing match, which is something, I guess. It's pretty tame. Finally, there's these test your might parts where you shove your opponent through a building. But there's one major thing that this game got criticized for, and that's this. T rating. Yeah, no Mortal Kombat game should ever be rated T. Now, the reason for this is because DC didn't like the idea of their characters getting their heads torn off. Now, I'm sure there are people out there who would love to tear off Superman or Batman's head. I'm not one of them, but what can you do? There's barely any blood, the damage done to the characters is flimsy at best, And that's not getting into the fatalities. Oh boy, did they butcher these. They are very flimsy and lame. Ugh. 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 Of course, the DC heroes don't get fatalities because, you know, the whole no-killing rule. Okay, not so much anymore. Thank you, Zack Snyder. Some of these heroic brutalities look pretty fatal anyway. Yeah, pretty sure they're paralyzed for life. Also, Joker and Deathstroke's fatalities had to be censored because of the rating. So, the payoff of Joker's fatality is really ruined. Shame, really. There are endings to the game. They're not really very interesting. They're just references to what MK or DC character they're the equivalent of. Even though Scorpion's ending is clearly a nod to Ghost Rider, a character that Marvel owns. Not sure how they let that slip by. Sub-Zero pretty much becomes Sub-Batman, and Katana pretty much becomes Wonder Woman. It's all pretty mindless stuff, and they're not really very presentable. They're just text with a picture. With new-gen technology, we should have been past this. But like I said, they probably didn't have much money left. Yes, I've harped on this game's presentation being kind of lacking, but that's because this was Midway's last Mortal Kombat. Midway went bankrupt not long after this game was released. Now, there are many reasons why Midway went bankrupt, which I'm not going to go into here, but it seemed like this was the final death blow for the series. What a way to go out, on a crossover with DC Comics of all things. What a sour note it would have been, because I can't really recommend Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. The only thing it's got going for it is that it has MK and DC characters fighting each other. But the gameplay is unbalanced, and it didn't really live up to the hype. It's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but it isn't a great game either. It's just okay. However, some good things did come out of this game. It led to Warner Brothers buying the Mortal Kombat franchise. This led to the Midway Chicago studio becoming NetherRealm Studios. This led to the reboot game, Mortal Kombat, or Mortal Kombat 9 as people call it. And it led to the Injustice franchise, which is getting its own sequel. I'll be looking at Mortal Kombat 9 next time. Why is it referred to as Mortal Kombat 9? What about 8? Well, they consider this game to be Mortal Kombat 8. Or at least it was going to be Mortal Kombat 8 until DC wanted a crossover game. Sometimes I wonder, what would have been if it had been the actual Mortal Kombat 8? What direction would we have gone in? We probably wouldn't have gotten the reboot. Well, what can you do? What's done is done. It's been educational. This is RetrospectGreg signing off. Have a fantastic day, and take care. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. Want to see more? Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share this video. It'll help my channel grow. Alright guys, I'm going to take some time on the next one. Going to take a while. Just bear with me. Hopefully I'll have it out by the end of the year. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.